Hello, it's Mike from Dimensional Walking. Today, I want to do a revisit on one of my favorite subjects, and that is the Montauk, the project called Montauk Project. Well, as you may know, or you may not know, I've had a lot of synchronicities that involve the Montauk. Started back probably about 25 years ago when I visited Mount Shasta. Had some really cool experiences on the mountain, which I've written about several times and did several videos on, so you might want to check that out. But also, what happened there was kind of starting of my journey, the Montauk journey, as I call it. And what happened was I went to this local bookstore, and I think the town is called Mount Shasta. Anyways, it was a very cool metaphysical type bookstore, and I was just looking through stuff like I like to do sometimes, going to a bookstore. And all of a sudden, I know it'll be hard to believe, but a book literally jumped off the shelf into my hands. Okay. Really crazy. And I think it was like the first book in a series of books about Montauk. Um, uh, I think it was called Montauk Journey in Time or something to that effect. Okay. Anyways, it's a really fascinating book. I ended up reading all the books. There was a series of probably about 5 books, and other people have written a lot about it also. So I just want to kind of go through some of the kind of interesting things and relate some of my own personal experiences. But like I said, I did a full video on my own personal journey on Montauk, and it's on the channel Dimensional Walking Paranormal Journey. And so, anyways, if you want to check that out, you may, of course. But anyways, let me just do a couple of the highlights. Let me talk about some other research I did and some of the other findings. Okay, so the Montauk location is Montauk Point, which is in New York, of course. And it's sort of like, I guess, in a weird way, sort of like Area 51 in some ways, okay? Some people have compared it to Area 51. Some people say, nah, it's not really quite that. But anyways, it sort of is because there's some interesting things, and I'll tell you why. Um, so Montauk is also. Let me just also tell you that it was an army base, an Air Force Army base. I think it was called Camp Hero, and that's when back in the late 40s during the Second World War. It was, that's when it started. I think it started a little earlier than the Second World War, but anyways, its little claim to fame came then. One of the things that happened there is there was witnesses, and I believe they're probably all dead by now, but the people that I knew that actually had interviewed people that said that they had actually witnessed Nazi U-boats or German U-boats pulling up next to it, next to the facility, and offloading something. Nobody really quite knows what it was, but it was pretty unusual during a war where your enemy is doing something there. Well, the bottom line was the story goes is that the Nazis, well, I guess it was the Nazis, but we'll say Germans. Let's just say Germans. I'm not going to make absolutely sure it was Nazis, but it could have been. And anyways, they were doing something with the Americans, some special project. Okay, so we'll keep on going. So there was people that said that they were actually kidnapped and taken to this place. And at the time, it was the Army Air Force Base um, at Montauk Point, and they were subject to mind control and time experiments. And in some cases they actually saw beings there. So this thing was kind of ended up being called the Montauk Project, or and some people made books and stuff, and they call it Montauk Chronicles. Um, but no, again, there's nobody probably alive that really knows. Well, I shouldn't say there isn't anybody alive. There is some people alive that claim to have had experiences related directly with Montauk. My experiences were synchronistic, and I did interview people, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Um, so, anyways, we're going back. It was this Camp Hero was decommissioned, or actually at that time was Air Force Base, was decommissioned in the early 1980s. And just to give you a little idea, it was a radar base. That was the primary thing it was. And of course, it was supposed to protect us during the Second World War from German invasions, um, basically air invasions. And there's some really gigantic, some of the interesting things, there's some really gigantic bunker doors on the side of some hills there. Um, and so going back, the interesting thing about it is Montauk is like this small, quaint little seaside village, resort village. And again, it's at the tip of Long Island, and it draws these vacationers every year. And the camp itself, or this, which is now a state park, is located quite close to the city itself. And so the interesting thing that if you look at this whole area has been kind of a really interesting place because it is this the roots go back to the Revolutionary War in which the area was used as like a what would I say, to test military equipment, or in this case cannons. Okay. Later, of course, then we have this Camp Hero, and then it was again to protect against Nazi invasions. So there's three characters I want to kind of talk about briefly. One is Al Bielek, and another one is Stuart Swaylow, and another was Preston Nichols. Now, two of those people I have communicated with. Al Bielek, who I've talked to in the past before he passed away, I had a fairly long interview with him, uh, with a group of people in Albuquerque. Uh, and it was probably about a 4 hour, 4 to 5 hour interview. Absolutely fascinating. And actually have done a video too on that interview, which you may find very interesting. Talks about all kinds of stuff, not just Montauk, but Montauk comes up. But anyways, Al Bulick was just an incredible guy. Um, and of course, he was involved with the Philadelphia experiment. Okay. And he was an engineer, and so was Preston Nichols. Both of them were these engineers, electrical engineers. And of course, Al Bulick was involved with the Philadelphia experiment. He talks a lot about it. We talked a lot about the Philadelphia experiment, how really fascinating it was, and all the things that happened around it. Um, anyways, moving forward, he claims that he was transported by alien technology from Philadelphia to Montauk, the Montauk facility. And at the Montauk facility, again, it wasn't just with aliens, this was a military base. He was involved in mind control and time travel projects. Okay. Mind control and time travel projects. Okay. And he was when I talked to him and asked him questions, he would answer any question. I just wish I kind of knew that he would answer any question, because I would have spent a lot more time calculating and looking at questions I wanted to ask him. Okay. But he did answer all kinds of questions. He talked about the ship. He talked about the Philadelphia experiment when it was transported, people that he knew that had died embedded into the ship. Oh, God, he went on and on about all kinds of different things. It was really fascinating. So, anyways, there was time travel at the facility. They did time travel, is what he said. And then this other guy, this uh, uh, Sir Rowland, well, what is it? Forgot his name. Sir Wardlow, Swirlow. He claims that as a teenager he was kidnapped in Long Island, New York. And he was taken to the base, Montauk base, and subject to various experiments. And it was basically pretty much torturous type experiments, electrical shock, near drowning. And then they would bring him right to a point of death. They'd bring him back, and then the person that brought him back would be considered his handler. He would be his rescuer. He would be his god, I guess, in many ways. And so that was the person that was going to be his programmer, his handler, his programmer. And then he did some of these experiments on the time machine and was sent forward. Probably, typically, they were sent forward about 5,000 years. And when they got to the end point of the time travel, there supposedly was this crazy statue looking uh, horse kind of looking statue. I think they had a specific name for it, and I apologize, I don't remember it. But anyways, the reason they did that was that that way the handler and the programmer would know that the person actually got to the end and actually saw the whole 5,000 years. And that was the reason they did it, supposedly. Anyways, this underground base was really nasty, dirty, just awful, really damp. And I've heard this from a few people, but anyways, Stewart was the guy that apparently had written about it in his book about Montauk and how horrible this place really was underground. So there was a lot of I guess these aliens. Let's talk about the aliens for a minute. Apparently, uh, and Preston, Stewart Preston, and Al Bielek saw little grays there. Saw these larger grays that seemed to be very intelligent, and there was a variety of these reptilian beings also there in the mix underground, doing helping the United States government to do these experiments on people and putting them in these time machines. So the larger grays didn't seem to want to have much to do with Stewart at all, because Stewart, for some reason, wasn't able to receive the telepathic information from them. So they just didn't even want to mess with him at all. So basically, Stewart said sometimes when he was in the room with them, they would walk out because they didn't want to be in his presence for some reason, apparently because he didn't have the capability to communicate with them, unlike Preston and unlike Al Bueller, who could communicate with them telepathically. um, but all three of them did see aliens there. Al Bueller, I talked to him about that, and he did mention he had seen aliens in the presence there. He wasn't always sure what they were there for, but he did say they were around and they tried to communicate with him. Um, and again, they did see reptilians there, but they didn't seem to be that willing to want to communicate with any of the humans there. They just seemed to be trying to observe what was going on. So, so one of the other interesting things there was this there were signs outside on the property. People always would bring this up to me when I talked to people that were there, actually just visit people who were just visiting the grounds, which is again a state park. And they found it very odd that there was these signs about these UXOs, which is unexplored unexploded ordinances. UXOs. And it's all over the facility. They have these signs. And it's really strange that they'll tell you about this, but they don't seem to tell you where they are or that you have to be extremely careful or anything else. But they just want to let you know they're there. Okay. And everybody seems to think that's so odd that, this area is potentially so dangerous, but still they let you kind of walk around it. So, anyways, that was one of the weird the weird things there. Um, One of the other things that is there, or when I say there, is there's people talk about this, and again, this isn't the visitors now. This is other people that I have talked to that claim to have been underground during, back in the 50s and 60s, and even in the 70s, and even a little later, actually. And they talk about something called the Montauk Chair, and this is kind of a chair. Some describe it kind of like an egg shape. There's a chair and then it's kind of has an egg shape covering on it. But anyways, supposedly you can go in there and you can kind of use it as a manifestation vehicle. Okay, in which you can, kind of psychically manifest things that you can physically have. I think one one guy told me he tried to manifest money, but that for some reason didn't work. I don't know if I think he manifest. I think it was an animal of some sort. I don't know if it was a lizard or something, but something. He ended up with a box, and in the box there was this creature. It was, just the natural creature. I think he said it was a lizard, if I remember correctly. I apologize. I didn't bring all my notes back to this presentation. I just got some of them. Um, Anyways, those are some of the most fascinating things. Al told me, uh, he was there on a bunch of different occasions. He was also there with his brother, him and his brother, where they actually came together from the Philadelphia experiment and kind of just ended up in Montauk Point together. Duncan actually um, was one that actually got in the time machine and actually did this trip uh, to see this destination statue. And that was really fascinating. A good friend of mine, by the way, ended up dating him, Duncan. Um, and supposedly that was Al Bielek's stepbrother. And anyways, it was really, the whole Montauk thing. And for me, there was all these different synchronicities. I ended up meeting a lot of different people that had been related to the whole Montauk project. So it was just crazy things happen. And it really started by me reading that one book. So if you want to go into the Montauk and really get into it, you may want to do the same journey I have. Get the first book. I think it's Montauk Experiment in Time, and then you can get the series of the other books. And if you want to read them all, they're absolutely fascinating. And who knows? Maybe you'll have a really interesting journey like I did, and maybe you'll meet Al Bueller. Well, you won't meet Al Bueller, but you may meet some of the other characters because I don't know what it was. It just started off with that book flying off the shelf, and the rest is history, I guess. And the reality is Montauk Project shows no signs of going away anytime soon. I think it's still always going to come up and crop up, and people like myself who had some weird experiences with it, and we'll keep on talking about it, I guess. But it is extremely fascinating. It's a very controversial. I know I'm going to get all kinds of stuff about it, but anyways, if you are interested, check out the my other videos on it. Them are among the 500 or so that we have. So you just have to search for Montauk, and you should get a couple of them at least. So, anyways, with that said, we'll see you. Bye bye.